thinking about sailing on a Disney cruise, specifically one of the UK sailings? Well, this is the video for you. Today I'm reviewing our 5-night cruise on the Disney Dream, sailing from Southampton over to Spain. I'm going to be sharing all of the highlights, the things that were great, and the things that were not so great, plus loads of tips to make your cruise smooth sailing. If we've not met before, hi, I am Ree. Welcome to the channel Mummy of 4 Does Disney. I've got an entire playlist full of detailed vlogs sharing all the magic of our 5-night cruise on board the Disney Dream this year, plus other vlog series where we sail on the Disney Wish, the Disney Magic, and also a 4-night cruise last year on the Disney Dream. So the Disney Dream, it was our second time on the ship, and it was our first repeater cruise. It was so nice to have that level of familiarity with the ship. But I'm getting my head of myself. We're going to go back initially to travel day. We did what I would recommend everybody does and travel up the day before your cruise, unless you literally live within maybe an hour of the port. You know what UK traffic is like. It can be a bit tricky. So do yourself a favour. Book yourself somewhere nice and near the port. So this time we stayed in the Premier Inn. Previously in Southampton, we've stayed in the Holiday Inn Express and also a different Premier Inn in Southampton. So this Premier Inn was the city centre Premier Inn. There is one even closer to the port, but by the time we booked our cruise, which was after we got back from Florida in January, so I think we must have booked the cruise February, March time. It was quite late that we actually booked to sail in August. Then that Premier Inn was already totally sold out. So we went for this one, which actually the location was still pretty good. It was still only like a 5-10 minute drive from the port, and the parking was literally outside the reception. So that was really, really easy. The staff inside were really, really helpful, and I like a Premier Inn because it's pretty consistent quality in that you kind of know what you're getting. The beds are always comfortable, there's always enough space, the food is consistent. A couple of sort of downsides of this one, it's one of the ones that perhaps is in more need of a refit. The finish on it wasn't quite as fresh and newly done as the one we stayed in near Heathrow for our Florida trip, which was really shiny and newly renovated. Still, it wasn't a really bad state of disrepair, just 1 or 2 things that needed tweaking, and it was clean. Most Premier Inns have a bar you can kind of go and hang out in, which is adjacent to the restaurant. This one was a bit different in that the bar and restaurant were up on floor 5. You had to scan in with your room key card to get to it. The bar didn't open until the restaurant opened at 5:30. So my husband was all set to just go and chill out and go and get a drink, and he couldn't do that until later on, which he wasn't very happy about, but he went for a walk instead. He was fine. The air conditioning was not working in our room, and it was an especially warm and stuffy night. But other than that, the Premier Inn was a very good price and pretty close to the port. We did go for the meal deal where we had a 2-course evening meal plus a drink, which included an alcoholic drink, and breakfast the following morning for a set price, which I thought was really good value. And then the children's meals, we just paid for the evening meals because their breakfast was complimentary. So price-wise, couldn't be faulted. The food was nice and the staff were lovely. For Embarkation Day, I did book parking with AB Parking. Now, if you watched my Disney Dream series last year, I kind of messed up on the parking and didn't manage to book the parking because I left it too late, because quite frankly I'd forgotten about it, which is a bit embarrassing because I talk about this stuff for a living and I have a planner with a list of things I should have done, and I still forgot to do it. But in my defense, had my cruise planner not come out at the time and I wasn't using it, would be making that mistake again anyway. So this year did manage to book the AB parking. When we sailed on the Magic, we went out of the Horizon Cruise Terminal and the parking was literally in front of the terminal. This time we parked in a large multi-storey, sort of just next to the terminal. So it was another 100 to 200 yards away from the terminal itself, but still pretty close. Much like when we sailed on the Magic, porters came round and collected all our luggage from the cars, so we only had our actual carry-on luggage to physically carry onto the ship, which was fantastic. Last year when I couldn't get to the AB parking because it was full, that was why we chose the Holiday Inn Express, because there was an option to pay for parking through a separate company, and we actually just left our car there and paid for that parking separately to the hotel, but at the hotel, and then we got taxis back and forth. The AB parking at the terminal was much easier for both embarking and debarking the ship. Embarkation was smooth and quick. There were queues for the various port arrival times. I think they were just knowing that people were going to show up in advance of their port arrival times. They were organising people into lanes, which was a very efficient system. Probably more efficient than last year where we were sailing out of a different terminal for the Dream. But then we were pretty much straight through. I liked that they had the photo ops in the terminal, plus the photographers as we were ready to embark, just the same as they did before the Dream, and in fact when we sailed on the Wish out of Port Canaveral. Now obviously when we sailed out of Port Canaveral you got to walk through the big Mickey ears. The actual terminal is a Disney terminal. This wasn't a Disney terminal because it was in Southampton, but they still added lots of Disney pop-up signs and things, so it still felt kind of magical. We headed straight for the welcome aboard lunch, which I'd highly recommend. All you need to do is ask as soon as you get on board any cast member where the welcome aboard lunch will be. It's been in Animators, on the Dream, and when we sailed on the Wish it was in Arundel. This is a specific welcome aboard menu. It's always delicious and it's a really good way to start off your cruise in a really chilled way. As other options, you can do like we did in the Magic and just go up to cabanas or get deck food, but I'd highly recommend the welcome aboard lunch. We love it. So pros of Embarkation Day, it was super smooth. We loved the welcome aboard lunch. We met so many wonderful people, gorgeous subscribers that were just so lovely. Such wonderful humans, so many new Disney friends. We got to our stateroom, the luggage was already there. Our stateroom was beautiful. We had a stateroom on deck 6, which we'd not been on that deck before, and I have some thoughts about that. Because we'd booked the cruise late, I'd struggled to book the midship stateroom I'd normally go for. I normally pick midship because if there is any turbulence in the water, you're going to feel it less. So we were slightly in the aft and on deck 6. I will say that although the stateroom was lovely, we did hear and feel more vibrations from the engines than we'd felt in other staterooms when we'd been midship and on deck 7 or higher. The sail away party was fantastic. We did do that on the port side, and we'd previously watched either on deck 12 on the starboard side or on deck 11. We were getting dripped on by the aqueduct where we were sitting, so I wouldn't highly recommend that exact spot because it was a bit leaky, but we did have a pretty good view. The show that night was the Golden Mickeys, which is sensational, in the beautiful Walt Disney Theatre, and the girls even got interviewed to be in the second show that other people would have seen while we were in dinner, because they kind of interview guests and it gets shown up on the screens for the people that are in the theatre. So if you were actually in the theatre and you saw our girls being interviewed on the big screens, let me know in the comments because I'm sure lots of you did. Cons of Embarkation Day, or sort of slightly less positive things, because I'm going to try and keep this video super balanced. We had an on-deck muster drill station, I would say for the first time, but we actually technically had an on-deck muster drill station for the Magic, but we didn't have a proper muster drill. We just had to go and scan something, so there was no waiting around, so it didn't impact us. Last time on the Dream and when we were on the Wish, we were sitting indoors in theatres on nice comfy seats in air conditioning. We were in Luna on the Wish, and I think we were in the Buena Vista Theatre on the Dream last year. And although it can be a bit trickier getting out because there's more crowds and things, it was a lot more comfortable, especially for the children. The on-deck muster drill station, I can't highly recommend. If you were on an especially warm climate cruise, you'd be out in the sun with very little escape. If you're on one of the Alaska cruises, you'd be freezing. And it did feel very crowded. We sailed with 3 out of our 4 children, but all 4 of our children have autism. They don't deal especially well with queuing or crowds, and they were asked to stand in a line in quite a crowded area for what felt like a long time because they were not enjoying it. So in future, I think what I'm going to endeavour to do when I'm booking staterooms on Disney Cruise Line is look for staterooms, and you have to Google this, it's a bit fiddly, but you have to look for the stateroom number, and then you would have to Google which muster drill station is associated with that stateroom number, and then you would have to find out which letter muster drill station corresponds with somewhere on the map and pick an indoor muster drill station. Now, obviously, if there was an actual emergency, we were right there by the lifeboats, so we'd be first off the ship, so I guess that would be great. But since I do actually trust Disney Cruise Line that, the safety procedures are there for safety, and it's very, very, very unlikely they're ever going to have to actually use them, I think I'd rather in future do the muster drill with our children at least inside in a seated location where they can sit, they can draw on their planners, they can do whatever they need to be doing, that is not just standing on deck getting quite agitated. The siren sounds through the muster drill. The children did cover their ears. It did feel more echoey outside on the deck than it did on the inside bits as well, we felt. None of them need ear defenders day to day, but they did feel the need to cover their ears during that. It was quite loud. The only other sort of con I would say from the first day is, although I'd had amazing reports all summer that The stock levels on the Dream have been brilliant. Apparently, it's been 3 days into people's sailings and there's still Spirit jerseys in every size, and they've still got loads of the Dream Loungefly. They still had the Dream ears, and they still had some sizes of Disney Dream Spirit jersey, but they didn't have any Disney Dream Loungefly, which was a bit sad because I was going to get one. They still had loads. When we sailed on the Wish, they still had Disney Wish Loungefly throughout the duration of our cruise. And I do regret not getting one. I really should have got one. I ummed and ahed over it and then didn't. I should have got one. So I think the moral of the story, kids, is if you want something on a Disney cruise and you see it, then you should probably buy it, because otherwise you're going to regret your life choices, okay? So all the Loungefly were gone by that time we got in the shops, which was after the show. It wasn't super late. We didn't queue or anything, but it was reasonably early on. Now, last year, the shops felt a lot more stripped a lot earlier. There was definitely a better stock level throughout the cruise compared to last year. But let's face it, we were sailing at the end of August. I guess stock levels were lower than perhaps at the beginning of the summer, because bear in mind, if you're sailing from the Wish, you're sailing from the home port, that's where all the stock is. If you're sailing from the UK, then Disney Cruise Lines had to bring however much stock they think us Brits are going to need over, and clearly they underestimated how much Disney merch us Brits were going to want to buy. And there were Disney Band Plus available to buy. We already had Magic Band Plus from the parks, so we didn't need to buy one. My auntie did get one though. The Magic Band Plus or the Disney Band Plus are pretty much the same thing. You can use them the same way you would a park ticket in Florida or the Key to the World card on the ship to open your stateroom door, pay for things, and they also light up and interact with the shows and things. The first night we had the Let the Magic Begin menu. We met our dining server team and we dined in Royal Palace. Our dining team were absolutely amazing. They took such good care of us. It's been the case on every Disney cruise we've been on that the server teams have been amazing. These guys were exceptional. They were doing magic tricks for the children. We just felt incredibly taken care of. And Royal Palace is absolutely gorgeous and is princess themed. On day 2 at sea, my husband and I did Paolo for the first time, which was stunning. The question really was, do you need to pay for an upcharge meal when all the food on the Disney cruise, with one or two exceptions of like individual cakes and things in Vanellope's or whatever, but generally most of the food on the Disney Cruise Line is included and is exceptional, and the service is exceptional. Why bother paying for an upcharge meal? So this was our 4th Disney cruise by the time we even bothered to try and book something like this to do as a paid for extra. And we did the brunch because we didn't want to skip out on the evening meal with the rotational dining with the children. And I was worried it would be a bit just too breakfasty for me, because breakfast food is my least favourite food, in that I normally find it a bit restrictive. And there were breakfast type options, sort of lots of like an egg section with omelettes and things, but they also had lots of very beautiful Italian, what I'd consider more lunch or dinner food, which I was thrilled by because that's the kind of food I was hoping for and the kind of food I enjoy. So we had a glass of Prosecco each included. My husband's not fussed on Prosecco, so I had his 2 Prosecco and he had just 2 wines that we paid for separately. I was going to have a Bellini as well. I really fancy one of those, but honestly, I was too full by the end of that meal. The food was sensational. It was so exceptional. The knowledge of the staff was just next level, and the food kept coming and coming and coming. I ate more in that meal than I would normally eat in several days back home in my real life. I put away so much food, but I do not regret any of it. It was amazing. Some other pros of that first day at sea. It was pirate night. There were some things that we didn't like quite as much about this pirate night, but anyway, we'll get to those. We had an animator's dining reservation for pirate night, and we had the pirate night menu. The children felt that animators for pirate night was a good choice. It was just the next one in the rotational cycle. There were multiple meets available for Jack Sparrow, which was really cool because last year the children didn't get to meet him. Zara was too scared to meet him. She thought he was a bit too much like a villain. I queued with the others, but on the downside, the queues were long, and they had us queuing in that corridor that runs alongside Royal Palace on deck 3, and there was no air conditioning there for some reason, and it was so hot and stuffy. So that was less than ideal. The children did really like that Mickey's Pirates in the Caribbean party was later and therefore in the dark. They thought that was fun and cool. There were still mostly good stock levels in the shop on this day. Now, on the downside for this second day at sea, the thing that I just felt didn't really work is that they put the Beauty and the Beast show, which don't get me wrong, I love, but they put it on Pirate Night. And I'm thinking this is because, and this was another con, we didn't have fireworks at sea. So normally they do Mickey's Pirates in the Caribbean earlier on before your dinner, and then they would do everyone having dinner, and then they do the end pirate show and the fireworks. Or last year on the Dream, it was the Sail the Shimmering Seas fireworks for the 25th anniversary at sea. I understand they couldn't do fireworks in certain sailings this year because of different legislation, some sort of European fireworks at sea legislation or something. But it was a shame there weren't fireworks. I don't think it was Disney Cruise Line's choice. I'm pretty sure it was a legislation something. But if you have any more insight on why the fireworks didn't happen, I'd love to hear it in the comments. We just know that they didn't. One of the other cons was while we were standing in that long queue for Jack Sparrow, there was no air conditioning. There was also no Pirate Stitch meet and greet. Now, when we were on the 4-night La Rochelle cruise last year, the Stitch queues caused chaos to the point where Stitch was so scared of the queues, he didn't come out for subsequent cruises. So maybe that's the reason they didn't do Pirate Stitch, but it was a shame because I think Will was hoping to meet Pirate Stitch. It was quite a rush because we were later dining to get to the deck party, because I think the deck party started at 10:15. We didn't start our dinner till 8:30, and ultimately we left before we were really ready to, so that we could go and try and get some space up on the deck so the children could see. It was still really crowded by the time I got there with the children. Luckily, some very lovely people allowed the children to squeeze in so that they could see, and they were lovely subscribers actually. And their little boy was very happy to meet the children. So it all worked out beautifully and it all worked out well, but that was a bit of a rush. The timings were a bit tight on that. You can choose the earlier dining rotation or the later dining rotation. We did the early dining on the Magic, which I was like, wow, my children will be starving by later. You know, of course, they normally eat at 5 at home. They're not going to wait till goodness knows what time. But what I failed to think about was how much they'd eat all day. So the later dining rotation is the one we've picked for subsequent cruises, because when you're eating all day, you're just not hungry enough by 6ish and you just can't eat your food. The only thing is, if you do the earlier dining rotation, you most nights would have to keep the kids up later if they want to see the shows afterwards, but sometimes, like on sea days, there are matinee performances available. So I guess they put Beauty and the Beast on Pirate Night because they were just having the one pirate show, but ultimately they had other shows, other less kind of key shows I feel they could have put on this night. I don't feel Beauty and the Beast worked that well with Pirate Night. They didn't have the rose pictures near the Walt Disney Theatre like they did last year, probably because they were already doing photography in the atrium for Pirate Night. So I think Beauty and the Beast, poor Belle, deserved her own night. And it would have been nice to sit and watch the show not having to wear a pirate corset, because it was not the most comfortable. So for day 3, which was a port adventure day, it was La Corona. Now, we decided not to get off the ship at both ports because there's so much to do on the ship. To be honest, you could not get off at all and still not go around everything. Now, of La Corona and Vigo, which were the 2 ports, some research led me to realise that La Corona was going to be a bus ride to the interesting things to look at, whereas you could physically get off the ship at Vigo and just walk and still see the ship and not have to get on any buses. So one of the downsides to La Corona is where we docked wasn't especially pretty. It was quite industrial looking, and when you got off the ship, you had to get on a bus. It was a complimentary bus, which is a pro, but you had to get on a bus because it was not a pedestrianised area. And it was only apparently about a 10-minute bus ride to the little villagey bit to wander around, but it just wasn't for us. So as a plus, yes, the shuttle buses were free. You don't need to book a port adventure in order to have that free shuttle bus. There was a smaller queue for the aqueduct because some of the people were off the ship. We did choose the cooler of the 2 days. We didn't know it was going to be cooler that day, but it was probably less windy way up high using the aqueduct than it would have been if we were at sea. And obviously had been moving, it would have been more blustery. But we were quite cold getting on the aqueduct the second time when we were wet. So if it's a slightly cooler day, do what we did and get on the aqueduct before you're wet, before you've been in the pools. Obviously, if it's a warmer day, then you might be quite happy standing in the sunshine and drying off. In the evening, the show was And the Award Goes To, which was where cast members were singing beautiful Disney songs in their kind of standard dress, sort of evening wear, suits, that kind of thing. They weren't dressed as characters or in costume. I feel this show was a testament to the talent of the cast, because even with all the scenery and the costume and the flair stripped back, the talent really shone through and they were still super engaging and the performances were beautiful. So day 3's evening meal was in Animators. Crush came around and chatted to our table. It was so entertaining. On the Vigo day, we did get off the ship, and like I said, a massive pro was we could just get off the ship and wander around and still see the ship right there. We didn't have to get on the bus. It was nice to do some pictures in front of the ship. And it's something quite satisfying thinking the ship's right there. I'm not going to miss my all aboard time. It's right there. You can't miss it. It's huge. So if you are going on port adventures and you're thinking, I'm not going to get off at all of them, have a think about which things are nice and close to the ship, and maybe you don't have to waste as much time travelling back and forth, and maybe pick those ports to get off if you're not going to get off every single time. So when we sailed on the Wish, Nassau, we didn't actually get off at Nassau, mainly because I was absolutely exhausted after having 7 nights in Walt Disney World, but it was right there. It was very pretty. We could have easily walked. And then Castaway Cay, obviously, again, you don't have to use transportation, just get off and everything's right there. The evening of the Vigo day, we had a performance by a band called the Ladybugs, who are a female tribute band to the Beatles. And they were really great, really, really enjoyable. I love the Beatles and thoroughly enjoyed it. However, the children, I've clearly failed in educating them in Beatles music. If I'd known the Ladybugs were going to be on board, I would have ensured I'd played them loads of the songs and they would have been happily really enjoying the show a lot more. But because they didn't know the songs, they were a little bit fidgety, and I probably should have just taken them to Kids Club instead of the show. Yeah, that's a bit of a tricky one. You don't know the itineraries when you get on the Disney Cruise Line of what's going to be on night by night until you get on the ship, until you connect your phone to the ship's Wi-Fi, and then your navigator app lights up with everything that's actually going to be on the ship. And I guess they do this so that people don't get upset if itineraries change. I get it. But it would have been good to know and therefore prep the children. Perhaps this works a bit more for my children that need a bit more preparation because they have autism. I don't know. But with hindsight, I would have either let them skip that show and go to Kids Club, or I would have spent some time teaching them about the Beatles before the day. On day 4, we dined in Enchanted Garden, which is beautiful, and we wore florals to match with the restaurant. Day 5 was another sea day, and Disney Believe was on twice in the evening, opposite your dining rotation, plus a matinee performance. Believe is a fantastic show where a dad needs to be able to believe in magic for the sake of his daughter, and the genie from Aladdin takes him on an adventure. There are so many cool characters in it. In fact, the same with the Golden Mickeys. There's lots of characters that are not necessarily the ones you'd think of being in the shows. Like in the Golden Mickeys, you've got Cruella de Vil. In Believe, you've got Mary Poppins. Just really cool characters. The cast are sensational. The costumes are amazing. I loved all 3 of those main shows. And don't get me wrong, the award goes to, and the Ladybugs were great too. But those 3 core shows on the Disney Dream, if you're on a longer cruise, do not miss those 3 core shows. If you want to skip any of the others, then just don't miss those 3, okay? Do me a favour and make sure you see them. And potentially watch the matinee because you may want to go again in the evening because it's that good. On this sea day, the girls got to do the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, which was amazing. And they did the Bibbidi Bobbidi for the first time on the Wish. And the boutique itself has definitely been upscaled and improved on the Wish. It's more kind of front and centre. It's got a lot more kind of window appeal. The positioning is better. It's in front of a staircase on the Wish. It looks a lot more inviting on the Wish. There's nice signage to have photos in front of. On the Dream, like in the atrium, but it's tucked right in the corner. You almost wouldn't notice it's there. And it's definitely not got as much kind of wow factor from the outside. From the inside, the Bibbidi Bobbidi on the Wish, now bear in mind the Wish is a much newer ship, is a little brighter, and I did really like that they've got that little area where you can take photographs once they've had their makeovers. The Bibbidi Bobbidi on the inside of the Dream, I mean, it's still gorgeous. It's still absolutely stunning. The girls had an absolutely amazing time, but the lighting was a little bit better on the Wish, which I'm probably only noticing so much because I'm filming, and it was just a little bit more spacious. But like I said, it's a newer ship, so they will have improved that aspect of it because it's newer. So I don't want this to come across as like a complaint, because do not get me wrong, the girls had an absolutely amazing time. Their fairy godmothers in training were sensational and they loved every second of it. But just if you were going to do both and you were picking a cruise just on the Bibbidi Bobbidi, the Wish does it better. The girls chose the Captain Mini package. They also could have chosen a princess dress package or the t-shirt package that they had the first time. On the Wish, they chose the t-shirt package because they already had loads of princess dresses and loads that fit them. So this time they chose the Captain Mini because that's something that's exclusive to Disney Cruise Line and you cannot get it on Disney Store or anywhere else. And they were thrilled. And I managed to get it just before the Royal Gathering so that they were all dressed in all their finery, ready to meet the princesses. And last time I washed out their hair, because there's a little hair card that says you're supposed to wash it out before bed, They were all so tired, I was like, do you know what, just sleep like that. And it stayed, it was immaculate. We'd seen a little girl in the lift actually, and they said, oh, have you been to Bibbidi Bobbidi today? And her mum said, no, it was yesterday. I was like, wow, okay, that hair is still good. Perhaps we'll give that a go. So just so you know, they do the hair so well, you might get a second day out of it, just saying. Do the bath, and not hair wash that evening. On this sea day, my husband and I and my auntie and uncle did a wine tasting on board for the first time. This was $50 each. The cast member doing the wine tasting was amazing. He was so knowledgeable, really entertaining, and we learned a lot. And we also got this really cool, exclusive, stern-to-stern wine tasting pin, which I really love. For our final dining rotation, we were in Royal Palace, where the food, as always, was exceptional. Then it was time for the very emotional see you real soon farewell party in the atrium. Now this again was really close to the end of our dining slot, and by the time I think we went for the toilet before our dessert came, and the atrium was already packed full of people queuing all around the atrium to get spots to watch this show. So honestly, everyone was finding it incredibly crowded, and I think the big difference you'll find between the British cruises and the American cruises is the Americans just seem a lot more chill. My children don't actually like queuing, but they get really anxious when they see other people queuing, like they've got FOMO, like they're going to miss out. And then we end up having to queue for things because they don't want to miss out on things. In America, people seem to just be like, it starts at 6 and everyone just shows up at 6. I think in the UK, everyone sees it starts at 6. We'd better find our spots an hour early. And then that causes everyone to have to be like, oh, everyone's going early. We're all going to have to go early. And it causes this queuing that doesn't necessarily need to happen. So I'm assuming it's because the British cruises are a lot more scarce than the American ones, and it's true Disney fans, it seems to be, that go on the British cruises, whereas there were a lot more first-timers that weren't like dressed in loads of Disney outfits and Disney t-shirts and things on the American cruises. I guess they're just sailing out of Port Canaveral twice a week, every week on the Wish, and people are like, hey, why not? Rather than I feel like it's true Disney fans that go on the Disney cruises over here when they sail from Southampton. So the queues, I've got to say, was still pretty extreme on the UK sailing. Again, the same as last year, probably no better than last year compared to the queues when we were on the Wish. I think they were a lot clearer when you watched the morning announcements that David, the cruise director of fun, as he called himself, did on the Stateroom TV. He was quite clear to explain to everyone that the character queues open at a certain time. So say the character queue opened at 6. By 6:15, that queue would be closed. But everyone in that queue by 6:15, or 15 minutes after the queue opened, whatever it might be, would get to meet that character, however long that queue took. So for Jack Sparrow, for example, the queue was already massive long before the queue opened for the character. And I think between us all, I think it took an hour to get to see Jack Sparrow. So it was quite a long time before and after that period, but the kids did get to see him. So they had their cruise planners, they were making their bucket lists and things in them. They had things to do in the queue, but ultimately they have autism and they really struggle with queuing. But I will say it's so nice to see so many other children on the cruise that were using my cruise planners for those same things, to keep themselves busy and entertained while they were waiting to see characters and things. So thank you to everyone that bought one of those planners and came up and showed me the planners. It was so nice to see so many of them out in the wild. But yeah, the queues were quite challenging, and a lot of kind of more seasoned cruisers. You saw the ones with the gold lanyards and the platinum lanyards that had been, Castaway Club members for a lot longer. Gold will be over the 6 sailings. Platinum's obviously more than that. Those cruisers, I heard a lot of them say they didn't fancy doing the UK sailings again because other sailings from other ports were far less busy and less crowded and less queuing than these shorter sailings out of the UK. Now, obviously, the shorter sailings appeal more to families because if as a family we were sailing 5 of us, we were going on a longer cruise, it would cost us a lot more money. We were choosing to go during the summer holidays. So I get why they were busy, but a lot of more seasoned Disney cruisers have said that they will not do these shorter UK sailings again. They will fly over to America, which obviously has its costs and its challenges as well. When we got off the Wish, we had to disembark the ship about 10. We did Disney Cruise Line transportation back to the airport. So we got there about 11. We didn't fly till 5, 6 o'clock. And then we flew for 7.5 hours. And then we had to drive back to Wales from Heathrow. So that was a long old trip. Whereas we just had to drive back from Southampton to Wales, which was a lot easier. So That is a massive, massive plus for sailing from Southampton. And we got off the ship with so many extra bags and we were just carrying all these things. We didn't have to worry about baggage allowance or getting on planes and going through all that stuff. Getting off the ship was super easy, which obviously brings us to the last day. Disembarkation was a little bit different in that we were told a time to evacuate our stateroom by, rather than a time to be expected at breakfast, which we've had on previous cruises. The cereal soon breakfast available in cabanas or the sit-down breakfast with your team. And we were in Royal Palace because we'd had Royal Palace the night before for our final dining rotation. So we had our cereal soon breakfast, which, like I say, is a cut down menu, but it's still delicious, and then disembarked the ship. It was quite a long zigzaggy walk down to collect our bags, but it was super easy because we'd put most of our bags off the ship. We'd sent them off with Disney Cruise Line, and we only had to carry a few handbags and quite a lot of shopping bags, if I'm honest, because we bought quite a lot, which if you've seen my haul video, you'll know all about. We did then have to take our bags from where we picked them up from our character tag location and take them on a trolley to our car ourselves. So they were picked up from the car and taken to the cruise, but then you have to take them back to the car with the AB parking yourself. But still, it wasn't that far and we were allowed to take a trolley to the car. Then a member of staff retrieved the trolley from near the cars. So I get asked a lot, which ship should you choose? Which sailing should you choose? Do you recommend the Dream? Do you recommend the Wish? My answer is it depends what you're after. If you want to avoid the massive amount of flying and traveling and the time and obviously the expense of getting to America, then the UK sailings are ideal. It was really simple to just drive up. We felt pretty fresh, even though my children are very excited the night before and don't sleep as well as normal. We were still pretty fresh getting on the ship. By the time we got on the Wish, after doing 7 nights in Walt Disney World, 7 rather chaotic nights, I was looking a little more dishevelled, granted. But even without those 7 nights in Walt Disney World, it would have been a big old flight to get to the cruise. So there is a massive pro in doing a UK sailing because you don't have that massive travel expense because flights over to America are not cheap. However, if guaranteed weather is something you're after, then obviously that might be worth the flight. We had pretty iffy weather when we arrived in Southampton. It wasn't great when we got back because if you live in the UK, you know that our weather is a little bit iffy, even in August. It was quite windy sailing across to Spain. I know other cruises said that they had quite a bumpy time, especially on the way back because the weather wasn't great. We had gorgeous weather in Vigo to the point where actually the children were complaining it was a bit too hot. I think it was close to 30 degrees. But then that's another reason that the UK sailings or sailing in January like we did on the Wish kind of suit our children better because although no one is a fan of the wind and the rain, my children don't do especially well when it's very hot either. Not sure if that's an ASD thing or just a my children thing, but they're not great when it's very, very warm. Which is why the Wish in January suited us because Florida in January is kind of like a nice British summer, the nice bit that we get, occasionally. So the Wish may have more guaranteed weather. Obviously, Florida has its troublesome weather times where it's incredibly stormy as well, but it's generally much, much warmer. The crowds seem a lot calmer in America. Like everyone's just a bit more chilled and laid back than the UK sailings. And the Dream was more crowded and there was more queuing. But I've got to say the people on the Dream that we met were just the nicest humans. If you're one of these people that came up and said thank you for the videos, that you'd enjoyed them so much. So many of you said you'd booked because you'd seen our videos and you'd seen the vlogs and you'd loved it and you fancy doing it yourselves. So many of you said that you'd watched the videos where Will and I had been getting up and doing the online check-in and you'd watched those to know what to do for yourselves and that they'd been so helpful. It means so much because ultimately, like I'm sitting here in my office talking to myself, and it's so nice to know that there are humans, real humans watching and enjoying the videos. And I don't know whether you can tell or not because maybe you don't analyze these things like I do. Like when I watch things, I think about these things because it's what I do for a living. But the amount of work and editing that goes into the vlog specifically, it's a lot. I spend hours and hours and hours and hours trying to make sure that the magic is coming through the screen. That even if you're not planning to go on a Disney cruise, that you feel like you're there with us and that the magic is coming across because it's so magical when you're there. I want to capture that. I want to bottle it. I will watch these videos of my babies on these cruises when I am old and I'll be like, oh, look at them, look at the magic. And I love seeing it all through their eyes. And even now, I've watched clips of my vlogs from when we went on the Magic and just seeing them and hearing the little voices and they're just like little babies. It's just, oh.
The aquadunk was really fun. The floor drops and you go down this red funnel thing. And
was it fast?
Yeah, it was actually quick.
Yeah, Marvel
Earlier,
friends,
when I was going up before the ship and I was on the line, I said, I found it goofy. Can I maybe have Olaf too?
It gets me in the feels, it really does. And I also really try and cram in as much information as possible because I really want these videos not just be magical, but I want them to be really informative and I want them to be helpful. So for everyone that came to say thank you so much, they are so magical and they are so helpful, it means so much because it means what I'm doing is worth it. And it gives me the encouragement and the confidence to keep going, even on the days where sometimes it's a little trickier. So yes, the people on the British cruises are just so wonderful and so generous. Like, we made up pixie dust bags to give out, and the girls made bracelets and things. This was not a giving to receive kind of exercise. It was something that I wanted the children to do. The children loved making them up. They loved giving out little gifts and things. They did not expect anything in return, but oh my goodness, they had so much. They were so lucky. People had made personalised things for them. People were just so generous. I was blown away by the kindness of you lovely UK Disney lot. So if you're thinking about going on a UK Disney cruise, yes, it might be busy, but as you're standing in the queues, look around, chat to the people around you. They're lovely, lovely, wonderful humans, and you'll really enjoy talking to them. Now, the next UK Disney sailings are actually going to be on the Fantasy, and if you want to learn all about those and decide whether you should be booking or some top tips for if you are thinking about sailing, then click on the video on screen now. If you've not yet caught the Disney Dream Cruise Vlog series, or you've missed an episode or you want to rewatch, click on the playlist on screen now to binge the whole thing from start to finish, or check out early release videos in my Patreon. I shall see you guys real soon. Mwah. Bye.